Hi, my name is Dr. Rich Macheski. I serve as the superintendent of the Troy School District. With me here today, Dan Trudell, Assistant Superintendent for Business Services. Dan, thanks for joining.
Thank you, Dr. Macheski. Good to be here.
We're here to talk about school finance in Michigan, and more specifically, how school finance in Michigan is impacting the Troy School District. We have shared a concern about funding in the state of Michigan, and specifically, again, as it impacts our school district, so much so that we developed a group. We call this group the School Finance Engagement Group. The purpose of this group is to come together, learn about school finance, both in Michigan, and again, how it impacts the Troy School District and the challenges that we face ahead. We chose individuals from across the school district. There are over 50 individuals on this group. They represent every school within our school district. We chose individuals based upon their application from a wide variety of backgrounds, but the purpose was to make sure that every school across our school district and every component of our community is represented within this group. We were so pleased to have well over 90 applicants. We only chose 50 to be a part of this group. This group has met now, or will be meeting, 5 times during the course of the remainder of the school year. We have met now twice, and we thought it would be great to share with you a perspective on what this group is discussing. So, talk a little bit about the purpose of this group is to recognize that the voice of our community is extremely important. We want to build a shared understanding. We believe strongly that together we are stronger as a community. So the more we know, the more we can create a shared understanding of both the challenges ahead and also potential solutions as we move forward. We also believe greatly in the Troy School District around collaboration. It is one of our core values within our school district. So collaboration is extremely important as we work with this group. We also want to be focused on questions that our community has around school finance. And so this is an opportunity to gather questions and to share information to clarify potential misunderstandings that might evolve around school finance. And also an extremely important part of this group is advocacy. We know that, again, together we are stronger, and there are times when we have to advocate on behalf of our students, our staff, our school community, and advocacy including in Lansing and including in the federal government. So engaging this group, helping them to better understand the challenges that we face, provides a more learned community that allows us to advocate collectively. And then finally, and most important, we want to continue to be strong partners with individuals within our community. So all of those together create kind of the purpose around why we put this group together. And we're, again, so excited that we had over 90 applicants for this particular group, and we've engaged now twice with this group. And we're here today to share more broadly the information that we have shared with this group. You can see the agenda that we followed within our group, our School Finance Engagement Group. We're going to share with you today some of the demographics that we shared with this group. We're going to do a Finance 101. Dan's going to walk you through a Finance 101. We're going to talk about some of the current climate, specifically the financial climate in Michigan and how that's impacting school districts and specifically the Troy School District, and then talk about agendas for these meetings moving forward. From a demographic standpoint, for those within our community that might not be fully may not be fully aware, the school district was founded in 1950. Our enrollment now is just over 12,000 students. We're down from a high of 13,000 students around the 2019 school year. There are 22 buildings within our school district. 22nd building, the newest building, the Troy Learning Center, came online about 2020. And the newest building prior to that was our preschool, which came online fall of 2019. We have about 12,000, just under 1,300, what we call certified staff within our school district. So those are our teachers, those would be our counselors, our administrators, and so forth. And then we have well over 250 additional contracted staff. So those are the individuals who drive our buses. They work in our cafeterias, they are custodians, they are our guest teachers and so forth. All in all, just over 1,500 individuals make the Troy School District run on a daily basis. We run a student-to-teacher ratio about 16.7 to 1 across our school district, which puts us right at the top of the state in terms of our student-teacher ratio. You can see our demographics of our student body across the Troy School District. We are just under 44% Caucasian. You can see our Asian, South Asian percentage is just under 40%, and then the others that make up the demographics of the Troy School District. As far as the city of Troy is concerned, most folks may not know, in fact, there are many within our community that don't know that the Troy School District is the largest school district in the city of Troy, but there are other school districts that are represented within the city of Troy. On the outskirts of the city itself, the outskirts touch Bloomfield Hills, Birmingham. They touch Avondale, Warren Consolidated, Royal Oak. So there are other school municipalities that are actually represented within the city of Troy. Of course, the Troy School District is the largest. You can see the city is well over 26 square miles. It is the largest city in Oakland County and the 13th largest in the state. Just under approximately 89,000 residents, more than 6,000 businesses with a median income of just under $120,000. I mentioned challenges. We are not free from challenges in the Troy School District, in particular around school finance. We're going to talk a little more in depth about these through the next series of videos that we're going to produce. But some of the challenges that we want to speak to today, specifically the rising employee benefit and pension costs. These impact all school districts across the state of Michigan. Of course, just like you at home, there are inflation challenges that impact us on a daily basis. So again, not unlike your home budget that is impacted by inflation, you can imagine the inflationary impact on the Troy School District when we consider over 1,500 employees that work with us on a daily basis and so forth. We also were the benefit in the Troy School District, as were other schools across Michigan and the United States. We were benefits for what were referred to as ESSER's dollars. Those were federal pandemic funds that were provided to school districts to help work their way through and recover from the pandemic. Well, we were recipients of approximately $32 million that helped to plug a hole that we're going to talk a little bit more about. So those dollars did exactly as they were intended to. They helped us recover from the pandemic. But what they really did is mask a larger issue, which was the challenges that the state was facing financially. So now that those funds are gone, that $32 million has been spent over the course of 4 years, those are no longer available. They leave it essentially a hole in our budget, and that's what we want to speak to a little bit more. How do we address that moving forward? We, like many municipalities, have it is costly for us to maintain our buildings and so forth. We are very fortunate in the school district to have a bond proposal that the voters in Troy passed in 2022. We call that the 23 bond. And we're very fortunate to have that because that helps provide much needed improvements to facilities across the Troy School District that otherwise would have to come from our general fund. So we're very blessed here in the Troy School District to be able to draw on those funds and upgrade our facilities, build new facilities, and so forth. Really important. We'll talk a little bit at the end of this particular video about where we are with the 23 bond in terms of our spend thus far. And then finally, there are very limited ways in which revenues can be generated from a school district, and that is all a result of Proposal A that was passed in 1994. We're going to talk more in depth about Proposal A as we move forward. One of the biggest issues that have impacted our school district and schools across the state of Michigan, and again, has impacted everyone watching this video at some point in time, is inflation. So the graph that you see on the page is our foundation allowance. Schools are funded through what is referred to as a foundation allowance. That is an amount per pupil that every school district in the state of Michigan receives based upon their enrollment. So you can see across the bottom, the blue bars represent our enrollment and the amount of dollars that we receive on a per pupil basis. So you'll see in the 25-26 school year, we received $10,836 per pupil. The yellow line that you see going across the graph is inflation. If we were to have received an increase in the foundation allowance equal to inflation, today we would be receiving just under $5,000 more on a per pupil basis, which equates to about $55 million to our overall budget that we would otherwise receive, but is not available to us today. And that if you can, the difference between where you see that yellow line and the blue line, that hole, if you will, that gap was plugged by the federal dollars that we received, again, over the course of the last 4 years. And again, as those ESSERS dollars are no longer available, that hole then becomes open, and you can see the challenge that not only the Troy School District faces, but districts across the state of Michigan face. How do we fill that gap? How do we draw that gap closer from an inflationary standpoint and on a per pupil basis? That's the challenge that we face. Dan, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Macheski, for going over just that brief overview of what this engagement group is and some demographic details. So jumping into just where we're at as of today with our general fund budget, we typically bring a budget to the board around the month of June, towards the end of the school year for that upcoming school year. And so you can see here on the left column, the original budget. That's what was presented to the board in June of 2025. And then you can see in the middle column there, amendment number 1. That specifically outlines where we believe as of January we were at with respect to our budget in the general fund. We are in the ongoing phase right now of updating our amendment for amendment number 2 that we'll bring to the board, hopefully in March of 2026 here. But as of right now, you can see the change in fund balance line item there. We are projected to show a use of fund balance of just over $6 million for the year, so slightly above where we were at the original budget last June. Unfortunately, the state budget did not come in as favorable as we had hoped. Obviously, we budget as conservative as possible and hoping that it'll always come above that, but just the way the budget ended up this year, unfortunately, we did have to dip into our fund balance a little bit more. So that leads us to this group that we have today to just highlight some of the challenges that we're facing, not only in the Troy School District, but across the state of Michigan, and hoping that we can gather some good feedback from our community and start having our community members advocate for us as we go into the upcoming school year.
Dan, I think it's also really important to mention for folks is from an original budget standpoint, we use assumptions on our original budget because typically speaking, we don't know exactly what that per pupil is going to be from the state of Michigan. And although we do our best to back into an enrollment figure, that is an assumption that we have to take into account. Compounding that this year, the fact that the state didn't actually pass their budget till well into October was a more significant challenge for us. I think it's important for the listeners to understand that we do the best we can with our original budget, but it is that first amendment that really zeroes in on exactly what revenues are based upon what we actually receive from the state and from an enrollment standpoint.
Yeah, and one other note I would like to make too is that our original budget versus our amended budget, when we look at where our enrollment actually fell, we were about within 3 FTE of our projection. So all things considered, that's a pretty accurate estimate. You know, we work with some outside partners that help us project out our enrollment, and then from there, obviously, we take some of our own input locally and internally to make our best educated guess of where we believe enrollment to be. So I think all things considered, being within 3 FTE on this budget, that gives us confidence going forward each year that, you know, we're able to estimate our revenues pretty accurately.
Exactly.
So jumping into some historical perspective of how the funding for schools works in the state of Michigan, let's just touch briefly on the Headley Amendment. So what this amendment was back in 1978, voters approved the Headley Amendment. So it was an amendment to the Michigan Constitution, and it's still in effect today, but it was an effort led by Richard Headley. And what this essentially does is every year as a school district and even local municipalities, you're required to take your prior year tax rates, and then you have to calculate what you believe to be the taxable amount that you want to levy on residents and businesses in your district. But you have to roll it back, meaning the county provides us with a reduction factor. So we're essentially taking whatever rate that we calculate and we have to roll it back just a little bit. That way, when we levy it on the new increased taxable values, the rate at which the increase of taxes you pay is not going to exceed 5% or the rate of inflation, whichever is less. So on any given year, a tax rate might go up, 2 to 3%. In the pandemic, we saw it go up 7 and 8%. So they were actually capped at 5% given the Headley Amendment. So that amendment was geared towards protecting taxpayers to make sure that as taxable values increase dramatically, that there is some limitation on the growth in their tax bills. So that is something that we calculate every year. That applies to all of our operating millages, which we'll go over here shortly, and then also to our sinking fund millage that we do have as well. So looking at Proposal A, so Proposal A was something that was passed in 1994-1995 fiscal year. And what this was prior to Proposal A, funding was essentially 70% locally funded. So all of the district's funding came from local property taxes, and then about 30% of that funding came from the state of Michigan. So the state of Michigan back then did have a foundation allowance, but it was significantly smaller than what we see today. And what we saw across the state of Michigan was some inequities. So there was wealthy communities that were generating significantly more taxable or significantly more tax revenue due to increased taxable values for their local schools, while the communities with lower taxable values were generating significantly less dollars for their school operations. And what really led to the Proposal A was one of the school districts in Kalkaska actually shut down in the month of March because they ran out of money. So that was something they went back to the voters a few times throughout the school year asking for more money, and unfortunately were voted no on that, and then the school board had to make that tough decision to ultimately shut down school for the rest of the school year. So I think that startled the rest of the state into looking at a different way of funding schools just to ensure that that doesn't happen ever again. Millage rates, so that's something that on average back then, homeowners and businesses were paying about 33 mills towards local school operational funding. So that number you'll see here on the next slide was a significant reduction to homeowners across the Troy School District. And then prior to Proposal A, districts still did have the ability to levy operating and capital outlay millages, such as a sinking fund or a bond program. So Proposal A, essentially what it did was it set a base amount per pupil across the state of Michigan. So the state set a maximum amount of $6,500 per student that they would fund. And your baseline funding was based on the 93-94 school year per pupil. So whatever your equivalent dollar per pupil you collected locally, that was your new baseline going forward. For the Troy School District, you can see that ours was just over $7,500 per pupil. Because we exceeded that state maximum of $6,500 per pupil, we are what the state refers to as a hold harmless district. So there's about 60 hold harmless districts across the state of Michigan, and about 48 or so actually levy what they call a hold harmless millage. So the state of Michigan allows us, as the Troy School District, being a hold harmless district, to levy that additional difference above that $6,500 per pupil locally. So for us, that's about a $2.5 million levy that we levy on homeowners across the district, and then that helps us make sure that we're made whole with respect to the dollars that we are collecting and getting from the state in total. So you can see that the state required property taxes locally to be set at 6 mills, so that's what is known as the state education tax. So homeowners went from 33 mills under the old system to 6 mills locally for the state education tax, which is ultimately sent to the state of Michigan in the form of a foundation allowance. And then business owners, they went from 33 mills before Proposal A down to 24 mills. And then as of today, we are still able to levy a sinking fund and then a debt fund, which is also part of the bond program that we have, and then enhancement millages, which we'll touch base on towards the end of this presentation. So looking at this graph, you can see here on the left, this was before Proposal A. You can see the green there is the state funding portion at about 30%, and then the blue part of that graph is the local funding portion at about 70%. So you can see with Proposal A, that amount essentially flipped. So now it's almost an 80-20 split, with the state funding approximately 80% of our revenue, and then locally about 20%. And then here, this just highlights when looking at the state education tax there, the homeowner amount, the 6 mills, in comparison to the 33 mills that was levied in total for local operations. And then on the right, we have our businesses. They went from 33 mills down to 24 mills. So looking at what do we currently levy as of today. So per Proposal A, we are required to levy the 6 mills for the state education tax, and that is applied to both homeowners and businesses. So when we see homestead, that refers to your primary homeowners, and then a non-homestead is typically something more business related, which may include agricultural properties, rental properties, and secondary homes for individuals. So that goes to the state of Michigan towards the foundation allowance. Also locally, if we want to receive our full foundation allowance, we are required to levy what is known as an operating millage. So there's kind of 2 parts to an operating millage for the Troy School District. One being the 18 mills that gets levied on non-homestead or businesses throughout the district, and then the hold harmless operating millage, which is levied on homestead or primary homeowners across the school district. The operating millage is the one that if we do not levy that locally, then we do not get the full foundation allowance from the state of Michigan. So that reflects about 20% of our foundation. The state is requiring you to collect that locally if you do in fact want to receive your full foundation. So we're fortunate in the Troy School District that our voters in November of '24 were generous to approve both this operating millage of 18 mills on businesses and the hold harmless millage on homeowners for a period of 20 years. So we have that assurance that for the next 19 years or so, we are covered with our local operating millages. And then we also have our sinking fund and our debt fund. So both of these are levied both on homeowners and businesses across the Troy School District. Sinking fund, that goes towards capital improvements across the district. So that's for us about $5 million annually that we have to repair HVAC equipment, upgrade floors, upgrade roofing across the district, the things that you don't want to put into your general fund, just so we can make sure that we're funding our students and our staffs appropriately. And then our debt fund, this one kind of ties in directly with our bond program. So our bond program is often referred to, meaning that it's the program that we generated a significant number of dollars towards capital improvements across the district. So as we look at renovating our buildings, the new Smith Middle School that we're in the current phase of constructing, and then looking at our athletic facilities, redoing Bolin and Larson middle schools, elementary levels, we've got bathroom renovations, we've got all new furniture at all of our elementary schools, playgrounds too. Mm-hmm. So that's all part of our bond program. But as part of the bond program, we also have to pay debt towards those bonds that we issued. So we refer to that on the accounting side as the debt fund. So that's something that we also collect locally in order to make sure that we're paying back those debts in a timely manner. So just looking at our total millage rates for this current school year, we have our general operating rates. So our commercial personal property is calculated at about 8.5 mils. Our homestead, that's our hold harmless millage. That's about just over 2.5 mils for homeowners. And then we have all other non-homestead, which is all the businesses throughout the Troy School District. They're levied the 18 mils. And then we have our sinking fund, which is just under 1 full mil. That's on all properties across the district. And then we have our debt fund as well, levied at 6.1 mils on all properties, which goes towards paying back our bonds. So you can see here, just to show you for some perspective, what the taxable values are across the Troy School District. So in the blue, we have our homestead. So just over $3.6 billion worth of taxable value in the Troy School District. And then just under $2 billion of non-homestead taxable value, so the businesses across the Troy School District. And then in total, just over $5.6 billion of total taxable value. So those figures are provided to us every year from the county. And then ultimately, we take those numbers and we use the millage rates to determine what our revenues would be locally. So I'll kick it back over to you.
Thanks, Dan. That's school finances. It can be very confusing. If anyone has taken a time to look at their tax bill, you see mills for this and mills for this and mills for that. For the most part, if you're anything like me, you don't pay close attention to it. But it's really important as you dig into it, to appreciate just where all of those monies go. And so I appreciate you, Dan, taking the time to walk through what it looks like here in the Troy School District. And one thing you mentioned that early on, that after Proposal A, there was the opportunity for school districts to raise money through the use of what is called a county-wide enhancement millage. It is an option that can be utilized to raise funds for general fund purposes. When we talk about bond funds, sinking funds, those have very specific purposes. They cannot be intermingled with general funds. So in order to raise money to support the general fund for things like increased costs around benefits and health care, for salary increases and so forth, for programmatic increase or programmatic improvements and so forth. All of those things currently come out of the general fund. So there is this countywide enhancement millage that is an option. And sharing with the group, we shared with the School Finance Engagement Group what an enhancement millage was, because there is currently a movement towards having a countywide enhancement millage on the August ballot. If certain components are met prior to that. So you can see from this particular slide that this was allowed for after Proposal A went into effect in 1994. It provides an opportunity if 51% of school districts that represent 51% of students across Oakland County were to vote in favor of including an enhancement millage on a ballot proposal, it could move forward. But it must be proposed countywide. So the Troy School District cannot engage in its own enhancement millage. It has to be all of the school districts across Oakland County, the 28 districts, working collaboratively with the help of the Oakland Intermediate School District to get that on a ballot. If approved, those monies would go towards every school student in Oakland County across every public and charter school. The great thing about an enhancement millage is, again, it can be used for general fund purposes, and it is totally up to the local school district to determine how those funds are spent, and with the Board of Education, the respective Board of Education and their community's input. For those counties that already have enhancement millages, you'll notice that of the large school districts in Southeast Michigan, Wayne County and Macomb County being the two largest, along with Oakland County. We represent, between Wayne, Oakland, Macomb, we represent about 40% of the students across the state of Michigan. But you can see these other districts that are other counties, excuse me, that have already passed enhancement millages. And in some cases, specifically Wayne County, theirs has been renewed on multiple occasions. Currently, as we sit today, 44% of students across the state of Michigan reside within a county where there is an enhancement millage. Now, the millage the enhancement millages generate a different amount depending upon the community that they're in. You can see in Wayne County, those numbers have actually grown significantly, as well as Macomb County. They're just over $600 per pupil now in Macomb County. The proposal is currently being decided, or it is currently under local board review. It is expected that it will be on the August 4th, 2026 ballot. It calls for 1.5 mills to be levied over 6 years. That would generate approximately $781 per pupil. So that's every student within Oakland County, in every public school as well as charter schools. $781 would go to that school district on that student's behalf that could be used on for any general fund purpose. If it were successful, this millage would be collected starting December of 2026. And you can see there, this proposal would be approximately $300 per year on a Troy home valued at $400,000. And certainly you can do that math depending upon the taxable value of your particular home. Well, as was mentioned, we're very fortunate in the Troy School District to have a bond proposal. We hit the ground running as soon as we were able to sell the first series of the 2022 bond, which was about $190 million. And that $190 million from Series 1 was to be spent on a number of different projects. So you can see in this particular graph, the biggest portion of that bond is currently a Smith Middle School. Smith Middle School is in the final stages of completion. It is anticipated that we will open fall of 26. We're really excited about opening that particular building. We did, as was mentioned earlier, we did improvements on our high school athletic sites to the tune of about 14% of that Series 1. You can see that in green. Technology is in the blue. Furniture and equipment, we were able to outfit all of our elementaries as well as a portion of Troy High, IA East, Baker, and the Troy Center for transition with new furniture. You can see that is in the purple, as well as some additional areas in elementary playgrounds in that lighter green. And then there is still some of that Series 1 that is left to be spent. About a quarter of those monies are left to be spent. That is in the darker blue on the upper left-hand corner. So the community can be confidently aware that all of those projects that we identified as part of Series 1 are either completed or they are well on their way to being completed to the tune of about $190 million. So we're very excited.
So just looking at a total budget summary here. So as Dr. Macheski indicated, we had sold the first series of bonds. So out of the $555 million that the voters approved or authorized the district to issue, we issue it in 3 series. So we issued the first series of these bonds in May of 2023. So as soon as we issue those to the market, investors purchase those bonds, and then we, in essence, are paying those investors back for that $190 million, typically over a 30-year term. So we're in that next phase right now as we look into Series 2. We're looking to sell those coming up here in March, actually. So we'll sell about another $195 million worth of these bonds and then we'll receive the actual cash in our bank account to continue to pay the bills to the contractors that are doing all of our construction work across the district. So we wanted to show here just kind of a project budget summary. So this is something that we as a district meet bi-weekly with our construction team to kind of go over the status of all of our projects and where we're at with respect to budget and future projects and where bids are coming in at and so forth. So this just breaks out very high level kind of all the different projects across the Troy School District that we have. So you'll see that it kind of breaks it down for the most part by building. You know, some buildings might have their own line item like New Smith Middle School or Bolin and Larson where they're getting an entire renovation across the whole building. But we also have, you know, just a broad category for like elementary renovations, let's say. That's something that we're still defining the specific details of how we're going to allocate those dollars. Much like we did with restroom renovations for all of our elementaries over the next 3 years. So you can see here, total projected budget thus far is about $390 million worth of construction. The reason it's not $555 million exactly is because we have some dollars, just over $100 million of Troy School District managed money. So that's things like technology upgrades. So if we talk about staff or student iPads and computers, we have some infrastructural upgrades with Wi-Fi and various tech-related items. So about $43 million worth of technology upgrades over the course of this bond too. So this specific chart here just relates to what is the construction component of this bond as we partner with Barton Mallow on these projects. So you can see here total committed budget there in the middle, $103 million. That is what has the board approved thus far in terms of total contracts to various contractors across the district. And so just over $103 million there, and we have about $286 or so million remaining of actual money for the entirety of this bond. So we talked on the last slide about that first series. We have about a quarter of that money left, so maybe about 40 to 50 million left to be spent. But we've got quite a few large projects coming up here over the next couple of years to start spending those down. So that's typically when you're at that point to issue that next series. So series 2, we'll get those additional dollars in our bank. That way we can continue on with some of these larger projects. So.
Great. Well, thank you, Dan. I appreciate you taking time to better help our community understand the revenues that are available to us in the Troy School District, how they came to be, and what all of our residents pay, and what those various projects are that we're able to do with those funds across our school district.
Cool. Yep, it's good to be with you today.
All right.